Like what we're doing here at Cube4two? Click the like and subscribe button to let us know. Also, Cube4two is now a TCG Player affiliate. Click the link in the show notes for all your shopping needs to help support the channel. Alright guys, let's get started. What's good, Cubers? It's your boy Matt, and this week we're going to answer a viewer question and take a look at a really complicated topic. So, the question this week comes from the Arsonist. That doesn't sound dangerous. This is an awesome video. I'm definitely going to be adding these to buff up my cantrip density, but the important part is a video on removal would be awesome! As I understand, removal density can make or break how fun a cube plays. So the gist of this question is, the Arsonist wants to know how many removal spells we should be running inside our cube, and the answer to that question is, it's really complicated. This is going to vary wildly from cube to cube, just like it varies from one retail draft set to another. But there are a few tools in our back pockets that can help us get close to the right number. And the first one that I like to use is templating. Templating is when you try and figure out how much removal a certain deck needs, and then you kind of add that density to your cube. So for example, let's look at this black aggro deck from Pioneer. Let's look at the amount of removal that it runs. It runs 4 Murderous Riders, Fatal Pushes, Doom Blades, Grasp of Darkness, Legion's End. So it runs all of that removal. We do the math really quick and we come up with the fact that it's running 11 removal spells per 60 cards. So removal is 18% of the deck. If we narrow that deck down to cube size, that would be 7 removals per 40 card deck. So if you wanted to support this black aggro deck in cube with this removal density, then you would need 7 to 8 removal spells per 60 cards. But remember, that only supports one black deck because the black aggro deck would need all of this removal. You also have to anticipate how many black decks you expect to support at the table, because the more black drafters, the more black decks, the more removal you'll have to have in the black section of your cube. Let's look at another deck. Let's look at a Simic Sultai deck from Pioneer, right? This is a mid-range ramp deck, and so now we're templating the Simic ramp portion part of our cube. This deck only runs 2 different removal spells. They run Aether Gust and Casualties of War. They run 6 copies total, so 6 copies, 6 removal spells per 60 cards, that's 10%. In cube, that means this deck needs 4 removal spells per 40 card deck, 10%. Now, one of the decisions you do have to make here is you have to look at the card Thought Erasure. Thought Erasure is in this list, and that's a hand disruption spell. And you, as a curator, have to decide if you're going to include it in your cube as disruption or removal or both, and how you want to factor that into your math. So that's another thought to keep in the back of your mind. But we've looked at an aggro deck, and now we've looked at a mid-range deck. Let's take a look at the removal package in a control deck. This is Azurius Control from Pioneer. Let's take a minute and look at all the removal that they run. So Teferi Time Raveler is a bounce spell. We could count that as removal. Teferi Hero of Dominaria has the Tucket effect. That's another removal. Azurius Charm, Supreme Verdict, Seal Away. This deck is running 14 removal spells per 60 cards. That's 23%. But we're talking about Azurius Control, and that means blue, and blue means counterspells. Counterspells kind of are blue's removal, and when we add in the counterspells that are in this deck to our removal package, 7 counterspells puts us to 21 removal spells, which puts removal at 35%, 14 removal spells per 40 in cube. And this doesn't necessarily count the board wipes versus the bounce effects versus the counterspells. This is just to give you a general number. Now, that being said, I know what you really want is a hard and fast number, and I don't have one for you. I can show you what my cube's removal percentages are, and I will, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is what you need. This is what I am playing. And so the percentage for me is that I have 88 removal spells inside my cube. The cube is 416 cards. That means roughly 22% of my cube is just straight removal. You'll also notice that removal is denser in some colors than in others. I run a whole lot of blue removal because I'm running cantrips and counter spells as modal cards, which makes the blue removal section of my cube much denser. You'll also notice that green has very little removal. Red has a ton of burn. So there's a lot of different variations on how you stack the removal in your cube. Again, this is not me telling you to copy my number. I'm just showing you my number. You can do what you want to with it. The other thing you might want to think about, though, the other key to fixing your removal is not just templating, but also adjusting for your format. Let me show you what I mean. This is a red aggro deck that I just forced and drafted out of my cube just a few minutes ago. Take a minute and note the number of 1-drops in this deck. This deck has 8 1-drops, 5 2-drops, and only 5 3-drops on the creature end of the deck. That means this deck is super fast. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even take a perfect draw to make sure that you're dead by turn 4 or 5, and you're certainly dead by turn 6 if you don't have some kind of interaction. You will be dead on turn 5 without interaction in my cube against an aggro deck, which means my other decks need interaction before turn 5. And that means the average deck needs 5 removal spells to even have a chance of seeing 1 by turn 4, because if you don't interact by then, you'll be dead. The other thing you need to think about is tailoring the removal to the cube. For example, Deadly Visit. Deadly Visit is a horrible removal spell in my cube. If you have the density correct, but the mana cost on the removal too high, it won't matter that you have the right number of removal spells. You need to make sure the removal spells have a mana cost that is relevant to the speed of your cube, which is why we don't play Deadly Visit, we play Doomblade, so that our other decks can interact before the lethal turns. Now, that means that you need to scale your removal to match the speed of your cube. Slower environments need slower removal, which is why in Limited, Deadly Visit was a fantastic card. Murder is a great card in Core 20 Limited, and in Pauper Cube as a matter of fact. But when you start pushing into faster, more powerful environments, efficiency of removal matters. I've also seen cubes that are overly efficient, where the creature in the metagame is slower, but all the removal is top tier, which means your opponent is spending 2 mana to remove your 3 and 4 mana threats, and those are your first threats. So slower environments need slower removal, faster environments need quality, faster removal. But let's move on. Let me give you some other tips for measuring the removal in your cube. And this might seem like a no-brainer, but some curators don't do it, and that's just listen to your drafters. Remember, you're the DCI, for those of you who remember what that is. You are in charge of dictating what's legal in your cube. If your drafters say, hey, the aggro deck, it's too fast, it's murdering us every time, I need some more interaction, I need some more play with it, then it's on you to kind of up the density. It's also on you to say, hey, look, the aggro deck isn't performing very well, the removal in this cube is too efficient, I need to either speed up the aggro deck or slow down the removal to compensate. One of the things I do to help me with this is that when my cubers draft, I track the winning decks and the losing decks. This is a teamer deck that won cube draft several weeks ago. You might have seen it on Twitter. It was this crazy cheat into play Oath of Druids deck, and it was sick. It was so good. But I've been tracking our cube winners for a long time, and the teamer deck hasn't shown up a lot, so I'm not really worried about it being busted either. By tracking your winning decks and your losing decks, you will start to notice trends. You'll notice which decks are constantly in the bottom and which ones are overperforming, and you can adjust your meta based on that. The last suggestion that I can really give you is to mock draft the hell out of your cube. All right, Cube Cobra and Cube Tutor allow you to draft your cube online, and so I encourage you to draft your deck and force that deck. Are you concerned that black aggro doesn't have enough hand disruption? Draft it over and over again and see if it does. Are you concerned that the control decks aren't there, or that the teamer mid-range deck is too good? Whatever deck you're worried about, just force it 2 or 3 times in your online draft tool, your Cube Cobra or your tutor, and figure out if the deck is there, is the density there, can you get a hold of those cards to put that deck together. And my final reminder, my final piece of advice to you, Arsonist, is it's a process. You're not going to get the removal right in your cube the first time you put it together. These are some thoughts for you to think about and consider and help you kind of reevaluate the removal package inside your cube and how efficient it is. That's going to do it for today, cubers. Let me know in the comments below how much removal you think the average cube should be running. Tell me what the removal in your environment is like and how many spells you run to try and help support that. Give us some percentages. Hit us with some hard numbers. Maybe the Arsonist can look at them and get some ideas. Also, if you've got a topic you'd like us to explore, go ahead and drop that for us down in the comments below, or you can catch me on Twitter at cubefortwo. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and if you are interested in picking up cards, please use the TCG player link below. It's the best way to support the channel. Cannot say that enough. Some of you are starting to be allowed out of your houses again. Be safe, and as always, until next time, shuffle up and keep cubing, my friends.